The only thing that makes you a failure is if you fail to learn from your mistakes.
You are welcome to today's edition of The Voyage. Today's podcast reminds me of the reason why I decided to have this podcast. Because my guest today is not just an ordinary guest. He's a builder, a flipper, a coach, a mentor. And he has gone through different trials in life that have taught him lessons. And these are lessons that he said now that he is 65 years old, he does not want to go to the grave with this wisdom that he has gained over the years. And he had made it his life mission to impact other people with this wisdom that he has acquired during his trials and during his transitions. And definitely he has gained triumphs in life, in family, in business, and finances. And therefore, you are welcome to a very raw, vulnerable, and dynamic and engaging conversation. Sit tight and enjoy the podcast today. This is Tim Davis, and this is his voyage, his story, and it's coming straight from him. Tim, you are welcome. Thank you for taking the time and sitting down with me for this interaction. So when we take a look at, your profile, we see a builder, a flipper, a mentor, a coach. Beyond all of these titles and all of these accomplishments, let's say I met you when you were 25 years old. How will you describe yourself then and now?
At 25, I would describe myself as a newlywed and a house framer. Okay. So that was basically my definition. But if you back up to when I was a kid, I'd love building stuff, tree houses, forts. And when I was 12 years old, I decided I want to become an architect because I thought I can become an architect and build houses, design and build houses. That was my passion. And all through high school, I took drafting, and I made a lot of extra money in high school by drafting house plans for people. But I went to college and dropped out after the first year.
Oh, really?
The reason I used to say is because it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, which is true, it wasn't. But the real reason is because I was immature and irresponsible.
Wow. Immature and irresponsible at that age.
Yep. So I was 18 years old, never been, out of the house very far. But so I kind of cut loose. Plus, I grew up as a Southern Baptist preacher's son.
Oh, your dad was the pastor.
All the rumors you hear about preacher's kids, it's true. So I went kind of off the deep end after I went to college. So dropped out of college and joined the Navy, spent 4 years there, and they straightened me out. So,
wow.
So anyway, I got home and started framing houses with my brother, met my future wife. We got engaged and got married at 25 and been married ever since. Same woman. So at 25, I would have said, yeah, I'm a carpenter and a newlywed. So that would be basically what I would have said. But after 2 years of marriage, I started building the business bigger and started having employees, started getting into the remodeling area, and I wanted to become a general contractor.
Wow.
And I remember my wife telling me, I was probably late 20s or so. We've been married, 3 years or so. She said, I had no idea you were this ambitious when we got married. I said, neither did I. So
how did you discover your passion and your interest in building? It seems that at a very early age, you knew exactly what you wanted to do.
I don't know. I've been very blessed. And in addition to being a preacher, my father was also a master carpenter.
I'd say.
And I wasn't born until he was 40 years old. So,
wow.
So he spent his whole career, as a project manager for a big builder and doing that kind of thing. Plus he was a master carpenter. So I don't know, maybe I got it from him, inherited it. I don't know. But anyway, it's a passion that I've always had. And I've been blessed to be able to do what I absolutely love for my entire life.
Wow, that's a blessing.
Yeah.
Were there some pressures on you growing up being a pastor kid?
Oh, yeah.
Expectations from church members and things like that. And how did that influence you growing up?
I was kind of mad about it because I was supposed to be the example for the other kids.
Very true.
So I didn't sign up for that, you know.
You didn't sign up to
That's
be
the other kid. I didn't want to be an example. So, yeah. So after I got out of the house, I didn't go to church for the next 10 years.
Wow.
Until I had kids. So then I got back into church, and so I went through a period there. So
Wow. Well, we'll definitely get into that story more because I'm interested in your faith journey. When at a point you were under the pressure to live up to a certain expectation, being a pastor kid, and you said, "Well, I didn't sign up for this." You left, and then when you got married, you started having kids. You rediscover your faith, right?
Yep.
What happened at that junction that you rediscover your faith?
well, I don't know that so much rediscovered. I would say I rediscovered the church. So my wife's family was Lutheran,
I'd say.
which I didn't know what Lutheran was. There's not many Lutherans down south. So anyway, whenever we visited them, we'd go to their church, and I thought, wow, this is way different than what I grew up with. You know, it's very formal. You know, we've got the robes and the candles and the liturgy and all that kind of stuff. And it's, you know, this is it was holy and sacred. You know, I kind of liked it. It was, you know, the Southern Baptist Church was nothing like that. So anyway, we ended up having our first kid. I was, I think, 32 or something like that. And I decided, well, I want to raise my children in the church. And it just so happened we lived almost next door to a Lutheran church.
Wow.
So we started going there, and over the years became very involved. And I eventually became a congregational pastor.
Really?
Pastor, I'm sorry.
Okay.
President.
Okay.
You know, which means nothing, you know, how church is. It's not, you get elected president because you're the one who's your turn.
I'd say.
So that's what happened there.
Interesting. So, you know, you've said many times that you've had as many failures as successes during your career. Is there any particular failure that still sting today when you reflect about your journey in life?
Well, first of all, let's redefine failure.
Good.
The only thing that makes you a failure is if you fail to learn from your mistakes.
Well, let's take a pause and reflect that. It said failure is when you fail to learn from your mistakes.
Yep. Or when you give up because of it.
Or you give up. Wow.
That's when it's a failure. Otherwise, it's just a lesson. If, you know, School of Hard Knocks has high tuition. So
that's interesting.
So we all have to go through the School of Hard Knocks. I don't care who you are or what you've done. I don't care if you've got a PhD, you're still going to have to go through the School of Hard Knocks the rest of your life. So we all make mistakes, and like I said, you know, it can be one of my favorite quotes is from John Maxwell. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
True.
So the only failure is when you give up, or if you don't learn the lesson that you needed to learn, then you have to take the test again. So
in the light of redefining what a failure is, then what are some of life lessons that you learned or an experience that, you know, actually shape your outlook about life, and that you learn a major lesson that redefine you, either in business or in family or even as a father?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't feel like I've had any failures because I've always learned the lessons I needed to learn.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of bad deals and some pretty serious stuff. I would say the lesson I learned was that, and I learned this lesson probably, I started learning it in my 40s. And I learned it by watching my customers who came to me to build a house. And what I watched is the ones who bought a house way less than what they could afford were very happy customers. They didn't complain about anything. You know, every house has a problem, so I was happy to fix whatever problems they had. But But the ones who spent every penny they had on their down payment, who got the maximum loan they could possibly get, who put everything in that house, they sold their soul for that house, basically.
Wow.
Those people became difficult customers because, they sold their soul for that house, so it better be perfect,
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I started to recognize a pattern. And it wasn't the pattern. Nope. They thought they were doing the right thing. And their realtor thought they were doing the right thing. You can qualify for, $400,000. We might as well go ahead and get it. And the banker, same thing. They're pushed them as far as they could go with their limit. They all thought they were doing the right thing because they were getting as much house as they possibly get and get as much credit as they could possibly get. But what they didn't realize, they're getting as much stress as they could possibly get as well.
Wow. Much stress.
So I started to put that together and it's like, maybe all this chasing the American dream is an illusion.
Maybe chasing the American dream is an illusion because some of these clients of yours that are buying a house that is beyond what they can actually afford, right?
Yeah. Well, they can afford it as long as they never take a vacation, as long as they don't buy new furniture for the new house, as long as they never go out to eat. Yeah, they can afford it. You won't believe how many houses I went to, nice upscale houses, and I went back into them for whatever reason, and there's no furniture. They couldn't afford the furniture.
Why not?
They had a couple of raggedy couches or something, but the furniture they had was very sparse and it wasn't very nice and it didn't fit the house because they spent all their money on the house. They couldn't. Their mortgage payment took up their whole salary.
Wow.
So that's a sad way to live, if you ask me. So, but that's part of the lie we've been taught. And I don't know if it's worldwide, but it certainly is the American lie.
The American lie, chasing the American dream.
Yep. So here's what I've discovered. And it's still a theory. I don't know if this is proven or not, but I think what we're all looking for, what everybody truly wants, is a feeling of contentment. I feel content. And we've been taught that contentment comes, the more stuff you get, the more content you'll feel.
True.
So you get more stuff and you work harder and you buy a bigger house and you get more toys. I still don't feel content. I guess I don't have enough stuff yet. So you worked hard to get more stuff, get the bigger house and more toys and more vacations, and you still don't feel content. In fact, you feel less content than you ever have. It's a wheel that you can't get off of until you realize you're on the wheel. Wow. So, and I was on the same wheel. I mean, in 2006, I guess it was, I started a subdivision project in, 2004 or so. It was going to be a small 18-lot subdivision, boutique, high-end subdivision. Of course, it took a couple of years to get everything going, and you know what happened in 2008. So we came online in 2000, late 6, I think, or so, just in time for everything to start, the recession to start. So also at that time, this is one of my, I would say it's a big lesson story. And this is the same time I was learning all this stuff that the American dream is
a lie.
What it's up. So here I was. I lived in. We had a model home, and I ended up moving into that model home. It was like 4,500 square feet, 5 bathrooms, and had 3 kids, and every kid had their own bedroom and bathroom, and 3-car garage with nice vehicles, and I had a construction company where I had I had 2 project managers, a full-time estimator, a full-time bookkeeper, a receptionist, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
People looking into the window say, man, this guy I want what he has. He's got it made. But what they didn't know, I was more stressed out then than I've ever been in my entire life.
Really? But at this point in time, you have more money, right?
Well, I owed more. I had 17 houses under construction.
Okay.
I had 33 vacant lots, all heavily leveraged. So just the interest on my construction loans and lot loans was $25,000 a month.
What?
So, and that didn't even count my employees and my rent and everything. So I needed about $30,000 a month just to break even.
Wow.
And I was doing that for a while because, sell a couple of houses a month, That's all you got to do. But we went from selling 2 houses a month to selling nothing in a year because the market just crashed straight
Wow.
off the cliff. So at the age of 48, I was starting over from nothing.
Wait, at the age of 48, you went to ground zero and started.
Lost everything.
Lost everything.
Lost everything I worked for my whole life.
What?
A lot of builders did. All the ones who were highly leveraged are the ones who went under.
Wow.
The only builders who made it during that time were the builders who just built custom homes with the other people's money, the buyer's money,
Yeah.
the customer's money. Those guys didn't have any debt because they were using the other people's money. But the ones who were doing my type of business, which is the bank loans, which is probably 90% of all builders, the ones who didn't make it just barely scratched cake by, and the ones who didn't make it, And so many of those guys, and they lost their marriages,
Wow.
lost their families, which always blew my mind. If your marriage is based on finances, what kind of a marriage is that? So,
If your marriage is based on finances, what kind of a marriage is that?
Yeah.
Because of the crash that affected their job, they also lost their families.
yep, a lot of people did.
Wow.
They got divorced. That's one of the biggest reasons for divorce is money. So, or fighting over money or lack of money.
Wow.
So, when my wife and I got married, we didn't have anything, and we just got nothing again. So, but we had 3 kids. But I would say the next 2 years, 2009 and 10, were interesting years. At that same, a lot of people lost their faith too. So, which my faith grew stronger because I had nothing left but God.
Why? At that time when the crash happened in 2008, a lot of people went through divorce. A lot of people lost their faith as well. But it was at that point that your own faith actually grew stronger. Why?
Because, when you got nothing left other than God, you better hang on to that. But I had my family left, and, so I went through 2 years of some interesting times, and I learned a lesson. This is a lesson I learned.
Okay.
It's a very important lesson, and a lesson that I didn't know before. I knew it intellectually, but I never had
experienced it.
Lived it. But the lesson is God will provide.
Huh.
So for the first time, I put my tool belt back on, which I hadn't done any manual labor in probably 10 years. But so I started doing some, whatever I could find. Craigslist. I had an ad on Craigslist so I built a few decks here and there, went and built some bookcases in people's houses, just carpentry work here and there. But after a couple of years, I decided, well, maybe, because I also got my realtor license in 2008 as things were crashing. So I said, well, I'm going to work. So over the years, I've had a lot of financial partners, and they all stuck with me.
Interesting.
So what I started doing is finding houses to flip. That's when I started flipping in a serious way.
Wow.
But I didn't want to have any debt. You buy it, it's your house. I'll get a commission when you buy it. I'll oversee the project for a fee, then I'll list it for you, and I'll get another commission at the end. And I did that for, a year or 2. And then I was leaving a lot of money on the table. So it's like, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we do these deals together? I'll be on the title too, and I'll take the risk with you, and we'll split the profits, and I'll get the commissions as well. So we did that for a while, and that's how I got my business built back up. And I finally reached a point where I didn't need the investors anymore, but I didn't want to just leave them hanging because they're the ones who saved me. So I didn't want to say, well, thanks for helping me out. I don't need you anymore. I thought, well, that'll be pretty selfish. Yeah. So, but they all said, no, you need to do what's best for you and your family. I'll still loan you the money, but you just do the deal and keep the profits, and I'll just be your lender. So that's what happened.
Wow. So you talk about one major lesson that you learned during this crash and afterwards is that God will provide.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what happened. In those 2 years, I would get down to the last few dollars in the bank account.
Last few dollars in your account?
And didn't know how I was going to buy groceries. Something would always come through, Somebody would answer one of my Craigslist ads and say, hey, I need something done, at my house. Could be small, at least need a door fixed. Could be, need a deck built. Could be anything. But that happened over and over. So we'd get down to almost nothing. Something would come through at the last second. And finally. And that happened over and over and over again. But I still freaked out every time it got down. So then my father had passed away, and one of my mentors from way back in the day came to the funeral. He told me, I've been looking for you for 6 months, but all your phone numbers have been disconnected. And so he found me at my father's funeral. He said, we need to go to lunch. I'll buy you lunch next week. So we went to lunch. And after lunch, he pulled out a check for $1,000.
Wow.
He said, God told me to give this to you.
What?
And the check was written 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I didn't need the money, but I was back. This is another time when I was back down to my last few dollars.
Oh, my goodness.
So, and at this time, after my father had passed away, the house had been sitting there empty for a little while because it was all tied up in a trust. And it was complicated. I don't want to get into all of that, but we couldn't get it sold right away, which is good. It was at the very, very bottom of the market. The house, it wasn't worth a lot at that point because the market was so bad. So I got 3 brothers, and I called them all up and said, what do you think about me moving into that house? And I said, might as well. So back up for a second. I was living in a model home of another builder.
Okay.
Who was having financial troubles. Who ended up going under as well. But they had a model home, and I still had some fairly nice furniture that left over from my other house. So we set that house up as kind of like a model home on the weekends, and I lived there, and all I had to do was pay his interest payments.
That is interesting. But people will come in to walk through the house, but you were still...
For a couple hours on Sunday afternoon. So
okay.
That's all.
Wow.
So, yeah. But in the meantime, they had some other houses in the neighborhood that were for sale. So I was out there trying to get those sold on the weekends. But anyway, I got the house we were living in sold to close in 30 days and had nowhere to go. And so that's when I called my brothers. What do you think about me moving into the house? Just sitting there. So they said, well, might as well. So we did a 30-day rehab. I mean, really fast rehab to make it a little bit nicer than it was. And we moved in there. So a year and a half, 2 years before that, we're living in a 4,500 square foot house where every kid had their own bed and bathroom. Moved into an 1,100 square foot house with one bathroom.
Wait, from a 4,500 square foot house to an 1,100 square foot home. How did your family adjust to that downgrade, if I may use that word?
It was an upgrade.
An upgrade?
In the big house, you hardly ever saw anybody because they're all off to... But in the small, we became way closer than we would have been. I'm glad my kids didn't spend their teenage years in that big house.
What? That is an interesting...
My daughters, I got twin daughters. They went back to sharing a little tiny bedroom. I built them some built-in beds and stuff in it. And my son had a room, and we had, of course, our room. And we all had to share the one bathroom. But it brought us together closer.
Wow. So I see the reason why I say it is not a downgrade, but it's an upgrade, because moving from a 4,500 square foot home to an 1,100 square foot home actually make your family to become much more connected and engaged with one another.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
So let me finish that story.
Okay.
So here we were in this house. One of the first things that happened was a septic tank failed. So I had one of my old contractors come over. He dug it up and said, yeah, you're going to have new field lines and all this kind of stuff. I didn't have any money to do all of that. Didn't know when I was going to get the money to do it. So I said, just leave the top off and we'll, because it was backing up into the house, So just leave it. So we just had an open cesspool in the backyard. And when you flush the toilet, you can watch it go in. It was nasty. So that went on for, can't remember how long, but I remember walking my dog around the block, walking my kid's dog actually, but you know how that goes.
Yes.
So, and I felt such, this is another time when I was back down to almost nothing.
Wow.
I felt such peace.
Huh.
And I noticed, why do I feel so peaceful? And I started thinking about it, I get it. This is the peace that passes understanding.
Interesting.
So I finally figured it out. That was a lesson I needed to learn to trust God. And apparently I had learned a lesson because I had such peace, even though I had no money.
Even though you had no money,
Had
but
three kids.
you had a peace that you cannot even explain. Wow.
And here's what happened. That very day, I got a call from some friends at church. Said, hey, we got some friends moving back. They'd been missionaries in Africa for years, and they had a house in Antioch that they'd been renting out. They wanted to know if I wanted to do a little bit of work on it. I said, sure, absolutely. So that little bit of work turned into almost a full rehab. So that was a lot of money coming in. And the day after that, a friend of mine, old partner of mine, an investor of mine, he was also filing for bankruptcy because he was in the mortgage business and his mortgage business went under. So I want you to list my house and short sell it. So I don't know anything about short. I've never done a short sale. I know a bunch of people who are good at it. I'll give you their number. No, I want you. So I figured it out and got it sold. It, made like a $18,000 commission on it because it was a nice house in Brentwood.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but all this stuff just started falling in my lap, and it never stopped to this day.
Wow.
Because I learned to trust in God's word. It says, his children will never go hungry. So,
But prior to this experience, is it that you did not trust that God will provide? And this time that you are down to almost nothing in your bank account, is it that was the experience that actually pushed you to the end of yourself to actually trust in God when you have nothing left?
yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's like I was saying when we started earlier, when everything's gone, the only thing you got left is God. So you don't want to lose that. So, yeah.
So you mentioned earlier on about how it's not a downgrade, but an upgrade. Were there any, resistance either from your family because of upgrading from a 4,500 square foot home to a 1,100 square foot home?
No.
Because they were already used to a life of comfort, so to say.
Well, back up a little bit. Before we lost the big house, I had a yard sale.
Okay.
We sold off, 3/4 of our furniture and a bunch of other stuff. And we sold vehicles. We sold a lot of stuff. And we got enough money to pay for a whole year's worth of rent at a brand new apartment complex that had just been built over on Cason Lane.
Okay.
And it had a pool and a weight room. So we stayed there for a year with that money. And it was like staying in a resort.
Wow.
So it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, upstairs unit. So it was, it was nice because from the big house, we moved to that. And from that, we moved to the other builder's model home. And from there, we moved to the 1,100 square foot house. So we kind of downgraded slowly.
Slowly, I'd say.
But yeah, now my kids were always fine with all of it.
Wow. So you talked earlier on about chasing the American dream, that it can actually be a mirage, that it can be an illusion and a lie. So how can someone, move from a life of not trusting God to a life of trusting God that He will provide, and to stop this craze about chasing the American dream? Because you said earlier on that it appears that we are all in search of contentment.
Yep.
And so how can people migrate, to this level of peace that you have?
Well, it's pretty simple. Contentment doesn't lie in stuff; it lies in Jesus.
Hmm.
You can be a Christian, but not be chasing Jesus. Still chasing stuff.
Wait, Tim. That is a big bomb right there. That you can be a Christian in quote, going to church, doing all of the activities, but not chasing Jesus. How? That is like two opposites.
I don't think it is. I think most of the people in church aren't chasing Jesus. They may believe in Jesus. They may be actually saved, but they're not chasing him.
Wow.
So that's where contentment lies.
Hmm.
I have to share an article with you, or a little essay sometime.
Yeah, I would love to hear that.
It's called Chasing the Sun.
Wow. Interesting. So it is all about, you said earlier on that it's because, people have been lied to, people trying to acquire things that is way above what they can comfortably afford. But everybody wants to live a life of comfort. Everybody wants to, you said earlier on that, people will look from outside and say, wow, he's doing well. But you have more stress at that stage in your life. But what about now?
I've got no debt, and I live in a house that's paid for. I drive paid for vehicles. I do a lot of purchases on credit cards because I like to get the points, but I pay them off every month. So, yeah, I sleep well at night.
Because of what? What led you to all of this level of peace that you now have?
There's no debt. I think that's a big thing about it. Because people who have a lot of debt are slaves to the people who hold that debt.
Wait, people who have a lot of debt are slaves to the people who controls their debt.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
That's biblical right there.
I feel so guilty right now.
Yeah. So the borrower is
a slave
to the lender. It's very biblical. And that's one, don't want to go off on a tangent, but one of the reasons I don't believe churches should borrow money to build buildings.
Wow.
Debt's not a sin, but I think it's frowned upon in God's word.
Well, but when you have a whole economy that is built on that debt, that they'll say, well, if you don't, how many people can actually afford a mortgage if they don't get a loan?
What?
How many people can afford a car if they don't get a car note?
Well, you have to ask Dave Ramsey that question. Maybe he'll come over and interview with you. But yeah, so, I understand, it's hard. It's, both my daughters bought their first house last year. They both have mortgages. And that's, when I got started, that's how I got started. And I don't know that there's any way to do it. But you just need to understand what you're getting yourself into. You're getting yourself into an agreement to be somebody's slave.
Wow. That stings, really. That when you're actually signing a mortgage loan or a debt, you are signing out your life in a contest to be a slave to the lender. Mm-hmm. Oof. That is a big one. So, so let me move away from that. How has your definition of success changed from when you were in your 25 or 30s to now in your 65?
Like I said, before I was chasing stuff, and that was my definition of success. How big was your house? How much stuff did you have? How big was your company? How many houses did you build every year? What was your reputation? All that kind of stuff. And now it's just my idea of success is, here's a good definition of success. And it's also a good definition of what it means to be free.
Yeah.
When everything you do is optional.
When everything you do is optional, even your 9-to-5 job.
Yes. And that's, most people can't get there till they're my age. But, if I want to work, I work. If I don't want to work. Yeah. But I like what I do, so I don't want to quit doing it. But if I have a day that I don't want to do nothing today, I don't do anything today. So
many people cannot afford not even to go to their job in a day because there are bills to pay.
It's a goal to strive for, I would think. So when you get to the point where everything you do is optional, that's when you become free. Yeah,
Wow.
when you become free, that's when you become content.
That is a big nut to crack, that when everything you do is optional, when it's everything you do in terms of things that bring money to you, when it is not optional, it is not mandatory, then you are on a path to freedom and a path to contentment.
Yep. So I've got some of my mentors, one in particular, I don't know how much he gets every month in rental income. He owns a lot of commercial stuff, a lot of houses. He probably, makes $50,000 a month. Just most of his stuff is paid for. So I would be surprised if it's less than $50,000 a month. Just checks every month coming in. He still goes to work every day.
Wow.
He's 82 years old.
82. What does he do with the money now? I mean, I'm just curious.
Travels the world and
Wow.
buys sports cars. But
That is what he chose to do.
he still, he didn't go to work every day. And he didn't work a full day, but he likes to do stuff. He's still making real estate deals and still mentoring other people. And he's still, his company was always dedicated to God's glory.
Interesting.
So, and I watched, him and his partner, like in summertime, they will hire these college kids to come work for a while. And many of them became Christians after hanging around with them for the summertime.
Really? That's amazing.
Not because they were preached it every day, because, they just saw how a Christian was living his life and how he was successful and how he was, they would start the day out with prayer. Sure, a lot of them thought that was kind of weird at first.
Wow. That's an amazing. I'm curious to know that kind of a man. So how did you now transition from being a flipper, a builder, into mentoring other people? Were there certain internal changes or internal battles, or what happened to you that you now say, yeah, I want to pass on this knowledge to other people?
Well, I've been mentoring other people and helping them start their business and getting out of their 9-to-5 for a long time, not really thinking anything about it. One of my mentees, I guess you would call him, he went to work for me when I was flipping houses, and he was doing a lot of the work. But before, he was working in apartment maintenance, making that much money, but he had a steady job, he was there every day. But, I said, hey, I think you can make more if you come to work for me. And it just as a 1099, not as an employee. So I had him get started, and I've helped a few people, get their businesses launched. So in that way, he's come a long way, let's put it that way. But I belong to a coaching group called Life and Air.
Okay.
And Life and Air, it's based on biblical principles, everything they teach. The leaders and the owners are all Christians. So I think I joined 8 years ago as a student, and it changed my life. It changed the way I looked at things. And after a couple of years in the program, my coach convinced me that I should start coaching others.
Wow.
And I never really thought about it. But I started a company called Flipping Genius. And I guess it was 2000 when I started it. So it's been 5 years now. So I started that. Then a couple of years later, my coach came to me and said, how would you like to be a coach in Life and Air? So I hadn't really thought about it. So I think you make a good coach. So he saw something in me that I didn't see.
Wow.
But here's the thing, and why I love it so much now, because I've had several people come to me and saying, meeting you completely changed my life for the better.
Wow.
You know how good that feels?
That's the best feeling.
Yep. So that's my payoff right there. So,
Wow.
you know,
Why do people say that?
because meeting me completely changed their lives.
Yeah, I'm curious. Is there something? I'm whether any of these people have shared any particular experience or interaction that made them to feel that wow, meeting you, an experience that they have with you, that was the turning point for them.
Now, for example, you know, I've got one of my first flipping genius students. You know, he was on a path just like I was. He's going to, you know, build a big business, and it was all about money and stuff. And he met me in my philosophy, my life winner philosophy. And not only did I actually invited him to a life winner event, he ended up joining. So life winner helped change his life as well.
Wow.
But it's also, I think, me getting him on the right path, because he was one of those people who had everything he needed to be a successful flipper, except confidence. He didn't have the confidence.
Wow.
So he hired me as his coach, and he used my confidence. And now we're doing deals together, and he's funding the deals because he's come a long way. So
Wow.
that's one example of
Interesting.
somebody. He had invited me over to his house that he had rehabbed, that him and his wife were moving into. And I didn't know exactly why he invited me over. I thought maybe he's going to ask for his money backers. But no, he's sworn to tell you, you changed my life. Yeah. So
Wow.
that was probably the first person who actually said it. But I've had several people come to me and say that now. So that's my reward, is even if they don't say it, you know, I can see how their life is better. I'm not saying that out of arrogance or anything.
I understand perfectly. That perfectly.
It's just,
So do you think that without all of those experiences that you went through, the crash, do you think you will have gained this experience, this life skill that you now have in terms of your philosophy about life, not chasing the American dream, and learning the lesson that God will provide? Without those experiences, do you think you could have learned the lessons as well?
if I had not gone through all that,
Yes.
I don't know. There's no way to know. But I think we all learn lessons. You know, when you're 65, obviously you think a lot different than when you were 25.
True.
So, and one of my favorite sayings is, when you're 20, you're worried about what everybody thinks about you. When you're 40, you don't care what anybody thinks about you. And when you're 60, you realize nobody's thinking about you anyway. Everybody's living their own life. They're not thinking about you.
Yeah.
So so many people are trying to impress everybody else, impress strangers they don't know with their nice cars and big houses. And, well, you know, good luck with that. If you can do it, and that's one thing to have the money. You know,
Yeah.
And if you got a 10,000 square foot house and you pay cash for it, and you got plenty of cash left over, that's one thing. But
Yeah.
if you're buying a house with all the financing you could possibly get, and if you miss 1 week of work,
Your life is miserable.
so yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. You're trying to pretend like you have the money, living a life of
Fakeness.
convince the people you don't even know, who care less about you, that you've made it.
Wow.
You've never really made it.
I know there is a movie on Netflix called Fake People. People trying to impress other people. People trying to, create an image of what they are not and who they are not in order to impress other people.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of a lot of people's ambition. And part of mine actually came back when I started thinking about it. I didn't realize it until probably maybe 10 years ago. A lot of what I did was trying to make my father proud.
What? Even after he had died.
Yeah, my father he passed away in 2009, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, I found a folder in his stuff that had all kinds of newspaper clippings about me and my business, and when I've been in the paper before, had some brochures from my building company and all this kind of stuff. So he was proud of me. He just never said so.
Wow.
Because he's from that generation where men don't talk about stuff like that.
So like that. But he kept all of the memories. That's amazing. That's amazing.
So, yeah, I think a lot of what we do is driven by things we don't even understand what's driving us. So I think it takes a lot of inner reflection, a lot of prayer, a lot of mentorship with people who have already been where you are. And so that's one thing. You know, I had mentors when I was young, and I've always had coaches all through I've been all kinds of different coaching programs. I think it's very important to have somebody who's been there, done that, telling you how to do what you're trying to do. That ain't gonna work, boy. That's not how you do it, you know. So
it appears that mentors and coaches actually play a significant role in your life.
Yeah.
How did you find these mentors and coaches?
Ask.
You asked them.
Yeah. I didn't say, hey, could you be my mentor? I just started asking questions, you know. Like, for example, I was working for a contractor back in the 80s and asked him, I was thinking about getting my contractor's license. What do I need to do to get it? And he says, well, you should talk to my partner. He's more on top of all that than I am anyway. And his partner and he became another mentor. His partner, I just had met him through him. So I started asking him. So I learned a lot from him. And I got stories all day long, but yeah, so, and I've had other mentors who I worked for sometimes, you know, so there's a lot of people out there who are willing to help. That's what I've been telling people, you know, if you don't know what to do, ask somebody, you know.
Ask somebody.
Because it's people who've already done successfully what you're trying to do. So, and most of them, very few people will say, I don't want to talk to you, you know, get away. They'll be good. Now, if you start bugging them, of course, that's one thing.
Now, I know there seems to be a plethora of people who say they are coaches today, either physical coaches, financial coaches, whatever, you know, health, you know. And I am on a kind of a verge in terms of some of these people. Well, they say, well, pay this X dollar amount before I can coach you. Definitely, I know that coaching is important. But from what you are saying, it looks like it is not just about passing on information and knowledge, but characters, value system. That seems to be your idea of coaching. Am I right? That it is not just about knowledge.
Well, yeah, it's values as well. Yeah, I'd say knowledge without values could be dangerous. So I think you have to have the values before you have the knowledge. Otherwise, you could, you know, take it the wrong way, take it in a different direction. But, you know, I think even coaches, you know, for me, you know, I'm happy to give people free advice. You know, they don't have to join my coaching program. But, you know, I'm not going to give it to you every day and spend an hour with you every day. If you call me up, you know, every couple of months and ask me a quick question, that's no big deal. But, you know, if you want to hire me, we'll go from there, and and we'll dive in deep real fast. So
interesting. So talking about your triumphs, you mentioned a couple earlier on. What do you think about legacy, and what do you want your children and your grandchildren to remember you for?
I want them to say he was a great dad who had integrity and he was a man of God. Other than that, nothing else matters.
Wow. Interesting.
In the end, nobody ever said, I wish I had worked more on their deathbed. I wish I'd made more money. I wish I started more businesses. And they said, I wish I'd kept in touch with my friends. I wish I'd spent more time with my kids. Wish I'd dated my wife more. So,
talking about, you know, relationships, you know, I've seen some of your posts at times that you and your wife will go, you know, maybe to Chattanooga for a nice dinner or lunch, in one of your favorite restaurants. What made your marriage to be strong and to have been able to stand the test of time?
Oh, don't get me started on that, because I actually sat down with my wife a couple of weeks ago. We put together a list, because at an event very recently, I was giving a lecture on how to have a great marriage.
Okay.
So I had we and her sat down and, well, what is it that makes our marriage so great? And we came up with a list of like 30 things.
Woo!
But one of the main things, we have the same values.
Okay.
If you don't have that, I don't know how you get any further. So having the same values take you a long way. We both took our vows seriously. For richer, for poorer, sickness and health, till death do we part. That's a vow before God.
Yeah.
When you're newlyweds and you're young, and you don't need vows because you're all over each other anyway. Why do you need vows? Because you're going to, wake up someday, you again, marriages go through phases, you go through a time where maybe don't feel quite as close as you used to. And sometimes you're back to feeling like newlyweds again. But in the times where you have a fight or something's going wrong, or you've lost all your money, or somebody's sick, that's when the vows kick in, because you took a vow before God to stick it out. And it may be a couple of days you got to stick it out, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of years you got to stick it out, but eventually you'll get over that. So, but I think that's the main thing. But yeah, spending time together is another big one. When we were first married, we both had just jobs, living in a 1-bedroom apartment off of Harding Place. And we get home in the evening, nothing to do. Get home Friday night, weekend, nothing to do. So our big thing was every Friday night was date night. I went to Taco Bell. And I still remember I got 3 bean burritos with extra onion and 2 tacos. She got 1 bean burrito with extra onion and 2 tacos, and we both got a glass of water. It's $5. And back when 49 cents was what it cost for a taco.
Wow.
So we spent $5 on Friday night.
Dating each other.
Yeah. Taco Bell. So, but every once in a while, monthly or every other month, we'd go to a real restaurant on a Friday night. And we still do that today.
Wow.
So now, we'll go for a whole weekend in Chattanooga or something.
Interesting. You talk about vows earlier on, that vow actually keeps you grounded, even when there are difficulties and challenges. Definitely help people that are married or that are wedded say vow to their partner. I'm curious, from your perspective, why is it that many people don't hold true to their vows?
Because they didn't mean them when they said them. They were repeating the words that the minister said. Repeat after me. Oh, yeah, whatever. They just want to get married so they can get going.
They can get going because the vows mean practically nothing to them.
Yep.
Wow.
I've even heard somebody say one time, this was years ago, I don't know whatever happened to them, but I'm sure they're not married anymore. But anyway, they said, if it doesn't work out, we just get a divorce. And I said, well, I didn't say this out loud, but I can almost guarantee you're going to get a divorce, because the first time you hit a rough patch, I'm done. It's just not fun anymore. I'm out of here. So it's the attitude and your seriousness, I think. Don't get married unless you intend to stay with that woman or man, depending on whether you're male or female. But don't get married unless you intend to stay with that person the rest of your life.
Wow. Don't get married unless you want to stay with that person for the rest of your life.
So,
So what role has your faith play in your marriage and in your business and in your dealings with people?
Well, I think just the values, Christian values, biblical values, in the way I run my business, and the way I interact with people, and the way I treat people, and same with my marriage. Like I said, marriage is God, and then the man is the head of his family. So, and a lot of people don't like that. They think that, husband and wife are equal.
Equal.
They are equal,
Yeah.
but the husband is the head of the family. But only if Jesus is the head of the husband.
Only if Jesus is the head of the husband.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
If Jesus is not the head of the husband, then the husband can abuse his wife or whatever. But if Jesus is the head of of the husband, the husband treats his wife like Christ treats the church, because the church is the bride of Christ, and Christ died for the bride.
As we begin to wrap up our session today, earlier on you talked about being a pastor kid. Also, you left church for a long time. You went back to church or rediscovered church. And now you've talked about your faith. I'm curious. I've seen that you played music, you sing and all of that. What do you think about the state of the American church?
Well, I don't know that I'm qualified to speak on that, but I think it's not what it should be. I mean, it's not what it used to be. It's too many people will go church shopping. They're looking for the pastor that would tickle their ears. So there's not a lot of true gospel. I don't know. I haven't been to every church, so I don't know. But a lot of what you see on the TV, the pastors on the TV what they're teaching I don't think is what we need to be hearing. It's all about self-improvement and feeling good, and God wants you to be prosperous. And, Jesus said, if you follow me, you're going to have hard times.
What do you think about the influx of the politics into church and into how people perceive God and relate to one another today as well?
Well, I think politics in the church should not be exclusive to one another. It's my opinion.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, you shouldn't have any kind of politics in church. But I think we have to have, if we want to keep this country.
Mm-hmm.
We're on a tipping point right now where, we've seen it all over the world. Christians are being persecuted all over the world. I don't know if you subscribe to the Voice of the Martyrs or not.
I do.
So, all that's coming here. There was a church that was attacked over the weekend.
Yeah, that was very sad.
Some would argue that a type of church. But anyway, I don't know that kind of thing is not going to start happening a lot more. The gunman who went to the Catholic church and shot the little kids while they were in mass.
Yeah.
The gunman who went to the Christian school shot up the kids. That's satanic stuff right there.
Yeah. So this is like a wake-up time for all believers wherever people are today to rise up and, like you said earlier on, to actually chase Jesus and not just chasing church.
I think Charlie Kirk's assassination is waking a lot of people up to what's right and what's true and what's really important. And it's, too many churches are just a social club.
Wow.
And I've even heard business people say, well, I go to this church because I get a lot of business when I go to this church. So you're going to church to get business, It's one thing, I'm not against getting business because somebody knows you from church.
Yeah.
If that's your reason for going there, then, the reason you should go to a church is because you feel God led you to a church. So, but yeah, we're getting way off.
Well, it's all about your journey. It's all about your story, because we can separate, like you said, who we have from our interactions with the world at large. So thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and share your voyage with me on this podcast. My last question to you is that, you said now that you are 65, you want to impact other people with this knowledge, with this wisdom that you have gained over the years. How can people reach you? And also, what is your big goal, so to say, let's say in the next 5-10 years?
Well, people can reach me by, I have a website for my coaching company called, the website is flippinggeniuscoaching.com.
Okay.
Just all one big word, flippinggeniuscoaching.com. And they can reach me through that, and you can email me through that. And if you want to know something about Life in Air is another coaching company, which I am a coach in, which I can't recommend it enough. I mean, it's life-changing. And we have a thing called, it's a Get a Life Getaway. It's 3 days, all day long. It's very intense, and intense in a way that it will scramble your brains and make you think in ways you've never thought before.
Wow.
People have walked out of there completely changing the direction of their life after 3 days. So if anybody wants to go to that, it's normally about $1,000 to go, but because I'm a coach, I can sponsor people to that. So, but like I said, reach out through flippinggeniuscoaching.com. What is my goal for the next 5 to 10 years? I don't know that I have a big goal for the next 5 to 10 years, other than just seeing where God takes me and keep doing what I'm doing. I'm just along for the ride at this point.
Enjoying the ride and stay content.
Yep.
Wow. Well, this will be the wrap up for us on this edition of The Voyage. What's the thing that strike me about Tim's story is his honesty, and is also his vulnerability to share his story. And that legacy is not just about, life is not just about what you acquire, but it's about finding God, and it's about passing on the wisdom that you have gained over the course of the year. Tim's story is an inspiration. Tim's story is a challenge. Tim's voyage is also a paradigm shift, that it is not about chasing the American dream, because that can be a lie, right? So thank you for tuning in into the edition of the podcast today. Until the next session, continue your journey. Whether you are going through a trial or a transition, triumph is at the corner. Thank you.